Good morning, everyone, and welcome back to my channel, Courageous Communications, where we talk to people who are doing courageous things. Today, our guest is Andrea Thomas. She is the co-founder of Voices for Awareness and founder of Facing Fentanyl. Both of these are nonprofit organizations that bring awareness about illicit fentanyl, counterfeit drugs, and related self-harm. And we're just so excited to learn from her. So we're just going to welcome her right in and get started. Good morning.
Jessica. How
Good
are
morning. Oh, it's great. How are you?
we're doing well.
Good.
A lot
I
of
know
energy this week.
I was going to say, I know you have busy days and even ahead of you and have had busy days behind you leading up to this big, exciting day. So why don't you start off and tell us about maybe that big day that's coming up for you?
Well, August 21st is National Fentanyl Prevention and Awareness Day, and is a day that many affected families, thousands actually, from across the United States, and other awareness organizations related to fentanyl are coming together in a movement of sorts in force to bring awareness and prevention related to the dangers of fentanyl to the public, something that's very important in today's world. And with these families, of course, have lived experience, and so they are the perfect one to tell the story for August 21st.
Yeah, that's really great. I was reading in some of your bios and it said something about the fact that a few years ago you had no idea what fentanyl was, and probably most of the nation didn't and really still doesn't, right? And so
Exactly.
I just love to hear how it is that this became part of your life.
Well, in 2018, I lost my daughter, my oldest daughter, Ashley, to a counterfeit pill that was made with fentanyl. And Ashley was given a half of one of these pills by someone that she trusted. It looked exactly like a prescription medicine, and it took her life almost instantly. And at that, on that day when we lost our daughter, we didn't know anything about fentanyl. And I know my daughter didn't either.
Mhm.
And for Ashley's age, I was a fairly young mother, and thought that I knew, thought I was informed about the drugs that were out there. And they were conversations I had with all my children,
Mhm.
but none of us knew about fentanyl.
Mhm.
And a week into our life being devastated by losing Ashley, some girlfriends pulled me into the bathroom and they said, "We have to show you something." And it was during Ashley's memorial service. And they pulled a cell phone out, and on that cell phone was that picture so many of us are familiar with now, but one I'd never seen in 2018. And it was the picture of the two little blue pills. And it was a public service announcement from our local police department warning people about the dangers of these pills, that they were deadly and not to use them. And so when I saw that, I knew Ashley was not the only one. There had to be more for this to come out. And so the day after my daughter's service, we began making phone calls and speaking with the press so that we could warn other people. And I remember the day after Ashley's service, we have a park in Grand Junction
Mhm.
where there are a lot of homeless people.
Mhm.
And they decided to honor my daughter because she had been taking food down there and helping the homeless. And I didn't even know that she'd done this. And I went down there that day with my grandson, Ashley's son, and we started telling people on that day, "Have you ever seen these pills? And if you have, don't use them. They'll take your life." And it
Mhm.
really just all started there, and it didn't stop. So a lot of affected families that have organizations like mine, they didn't know about fentanyl either.
Mhm.
Um, and it starts with your child.
Yeah.
Uh, and then you learn about all of the others that, all the other lives that fentanyl has taken. And you're not able to stop at that point.
Yeah, it becomes maybe like a life purpose for you.
Uh, yes. And it's a heavy journey.
Yeah.
You're constantly reminded and constantly seeing these faces. but it's something that has to be done. And, so many of these families, because we didn't know about fentanyl before, we wouldn't be speaking with senators and uh, people like this if it was not for the loss of our children.
Right.
And so when we do that, it's very important to us to continue to tell our children's stories. We're not doing it because we want pity or for people to feel sorry for us. We're telling them because we've lost our children and we want them to know before it's too late for their families.
Yeah. I mean, yeah, we see lots of news reports that now they're, finding, overwhelming amounts of fentanyl that could essentially destroy the nation numbers wise. And that's scary. So what do the actual numbers kind of look like? I'm sure you have lots of data in your brain. Just kind of give us some fast facts. Like, what does that kind of look like?
Well, the CDC is telling us that in the 2021 year that we lost almost 800 or 108,000 people, that 77% of teen death related to illicit fentanyl. And as you know, the teen deaths are rising. And when you're talking about a 13-year-old or a 12-year-old dying from fentanyl, you're not talking about a person that probably had a substance use problem or issue. You're talking about somebody that does not understand the ramifications of how deadly these drugs are. And young people experiment, right?
Yeah.
It is part of growing up, and they don't understand how serious this is. And so it's very important to us to get that message out. And you have to understand that many people that have lost a child or a husband or wife, whatever it may be, that some of these people are unsuspecting, and others were actively using and may have been using something else, and fentanyl was in it without their knowledge, and it took their life. Or maybe it's someone that's just actively seeking this drug. But all of these deaths are important.
Yeah.
They're all equally important, no matter what the situation was.
Mm-hmm.
And fentanyl is so highly addictive. This is a drug like we've never seen before. It's not the drugs of 10 years ago where we know a lot of people that were able to go into recovery and had used heroin or methamphetamine for years, but it didn't kill them instantly. And so that's why this drug is of such significance, especially in this time with all of the synthetic drugs that are coming out. There are worse drugs coming, which is hard to imagine for me that there's something worse than fentanyl. But it's true. There are more powerful, more dangerous drugs out there, and it's going to continue to get worse. So we have got to address this issue of fentanyl and all of these analogs that are flooding our country and taking American lives.
Yeah. So in your opinion, if you were the person who held the magic wand, how do we do that? How do we really address this?
Well, first of all, it needs to be addressed. I feel like we're acting as criminally as these transnational criminals, these cartels that are bringing these drugs into the United States, because we're not doing anything about it. We're aware of what's going on. The federal government is very clear on what's happening. And by not addressing that, it's the disservice to Americans.
Yeah.
It's unspeakable. And we're stepping into those criminal shoes our own selves. It's got to be addressed. But if I had a magic wand, first and foremost, I would scream it from the rooftops. And, we just had a COVID pandemic where in a few days, everyone knew the rules, right? Put the mask on, wash your hands, use hand sanitizer. And the federal government was able to reach Americans because they were persistent. They did it every day, all day long. And that's how I think that we need to address this fentanyl crisis. They need to come out strong. They need to warn Americans and make sure that they're understanding, that they get a clear message of how dangerous this is and that it can happen to anyone. It's not a specific population that is dying from illicit fentanyl. And then I believe that they need to treat it like a national security crisis, that it is. Um, these drugs are coming in from China and Mexico, and the sole purpose is to make money. And when you lose that many people in one country from illicit fentanyl, it's clear to me that that's a national security crisis that needs to be addressed. They're taking American lives, and in our country, we come first. And somebody needs to address this at the federal level. We need a whole government response to this.
Mm-hmm.
So that's where I would begin. But I have to tell you, Jessica, I'm an affected family member. I'm a parent. I don't work for the federal government. So we're out there doing everything we can to spread prevention and awareness. We do not, have the tools to stop the flood of fentanyl into the United States. Yeah. So I don't need to give the federal government the suggestion or the answers to this. They have them, and they need to get started on working on it.
Wow. That must feel kind of sometimes when you're up against that, though, and you're seeing that what needs to happen and where we're at, the disappointment that I'm sure comes between there, the frustration, the anger. Talk a little bit about how you manage some of that in the process of continuing to pursue what you know you're after, but managing all of the heartbreaks along the way.
Well, like I said, it's a heavy thing to deal with on a daily basis. And most of us have jobs and have kids still. And there are many other things that are going on in our lives. But we seem to put the most of our efforts into this because of the urgency, because we see all those faces every day. And, the public doesn't see hundreds of faces a day like we do in our advocacy. Mm-hmm. So you put yourself in a bubble a little bit to be protected. It's heavy. It is heartbreaking. It can become very emotional. And you're thinking about your child also in this process every day. So an example, last Saturday, I was working away for this national day, and I came across I was looking in my messenger, and all of these messages popped up that I had not seen about recent deaths, teen deaths. And they had occurred, in the last week or month of time. And although I see that every day, sadly, in that moment, seeing, 6 or 7 of these communications come up, it makes you want to take to the streets. You feel like you're silently being bombed. People are vanishing before our eyes, and nobody's paying attention. And it was the first time in my life that I understood why people rallied and sometimes protested, because they're so urgent. They're so desperate to find answers. And you take to the street and do it. Now, affected families are peaceful people. We don't do things like that. But what is it going to take, Jessica, to get the attention that this issue deserves? So you just do the best you can. And there's so many of us, unfortunately, that we are a huge support to each other.
Yeah.
We rely on each other.
So I always think about there's good and bad in all things, right? And social media, I've seen a lot of links to social media and fentanyl. So talk to me a little bit about that dynamic and what is that the realities? Is that not really the reality? Talk to me a little bit about that.
Well, social media plays a big part of what's going on, especially with youth. So, everyone knows that their teenager has a phone in their hand 95% of the day in most cases. They're communicating with their friends and looking at social media all day long. And these cartels are creative, and they know how to reach our youth. So they've gone into social media, luring them in, tempting them in, and deceiving them. And it's a huge problem. There are no safeguards there. You have to realize that the cartels are also associated to sex trafficking. And so beyond the drugs, there's another issue where they're pulling these kids in that way. Their parents don't have safeguards anymore when it comes to social media. You know, before when we had the phone that plugged in the wall, your parents would come in your room and unplug the phone and take it. And these kids know their way around social media. But even if they aren't trying to find this, the dealers are finding them. So your son or daughter could be sitting at your kitchen table, at your dinner table, and the cartel is sitting right there with them. These kids can access anything on the phone. There's something called a plug. And as easy as you would go onto your app to look for nearby restaurants, people can go onto these apps and find where the nearest dealer is and look for any kind of substance that they want to be delivered to your home. And the example we always use is as simply as delivering a pizza to your house. Yeah. That's very scary. You can be sitting across from your child and not even know this is going on. So that is something that needs to be addressed. The longer that we don't address this issue, the more it's going to continue to grow. And they will just continue to find ways through social media and e-commerce to sell these drugs. Our children don't matter to them. It's the dollar that matters to them. Yeah. And people need to be aware of that.
I talk about that all the time with clients and in speeches and stuff. We are a commodity, each one of us now, let me kind of piggyback off of that. So we're talking about social media and the plugs and different things. Do you see these networks, these huge social media networks, are they working with you guys to kind of create safeguards, or do you find resistance in that area?
Well, my daughter her situation did not include social media as a way of purchasing the pill. But I will tell you that as my daughter lay there on the cold concrete with paramedics around her, the people that were on scene were filming her live. And so when I think about social media and how disgusting, thank God I never saw it. Or any of my family saw anything like that. So it's disgusting to me. It's horrific. So these families that have lost their child from drugs that were purchased on Snapchat want answers. And they are going to social media outlets like Snapchat and TikTok, and they're asking them for answers and to address the safety of their platforms. And it doesn't appear to me that they're getting very far in that. Some of these companies like Snapchat are saying that they have transparency policies now and that they're working with law enforcement and these dealers when they find it. But, they know how to do this. They know how to stop this. And the fact of the matter is that they will lose viewers, which means they lose advertising and they lose money. Yeah. And so if that is more important to them than American youth, there's a very big problem there. And our government needs to address these matters.
Yeah, for sure. Wow. Okay. So as a parent, you're listening to this, you're hearing some of this new information, maybe for the first time, or maybe you've been hearing these and you're thinking, maybe these are just buzzwords. It's, it's the same thing as something, just like the other drugs. We know they're bad. We get it. Fine. But maybe you haven't really intently listened and now you're hearing it for the first time. You're really hearing, your active listening is perk. As a parent, what message do you deliver to your adult kids, to your teenage kids? What's the message? So give us the message here.
People ask us sometimes if this is just say no to drugs doesn't work. This isn't a just say no campaign. We live in a different time. We've got to learn different ways, a different way to address this type of drug crisis. So I think open communication with your children, starting the conversation, not accusatory. You want to know what your kids know about fentanyl. We don't want to start giving drugs like fentanyl catchy names. These are dangerous poison substances, and they will take your life. And so I think that when starting conversations with your kids, the first thing to ask them is, what do you know about this? And then lead into the dangers of fentanyl. Kids seem to think they're invincible, and they don't think it's going to happen to them. And so I think it's important to show them others that it has happened to, because if you were to go on our Facing Fentanyl website and look at the memorial gallery, it's not the picture that you may have had 20 years ago of people that were suffering from substance abuse, right? You have some idea of somebody that is maybe homeless or suffering in so many different ways. You look at these photos and they look like every American kid. And so this can't, parents are going into their kids' rooms now in the morning and they're finding them dead from using fentanyl in their own home when they were in the room next door. That's how deadly that this is. And families just need to have open conversations and share as many facts as they can. Share the other faces of fentanyl,
Yes,
that are out there.
absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. And what is that? It's facingfentanylnow.org, correct?
It is facingfentanylnow.org. And you can go onto the website and find fentanyl facts. You can see other supporters of our organization. And if you're an affected family that's new to this journey, you'll see many other supporters and links to their sites. And, as I said, our fentanyl communities are very supportive. And maybe within that space, you can find a place for you to go to for that support. Many options there.
Yeah. So we're going to loop back around to the fact that, August 21st is, tell me how you say it again, Fentanyl Awareness and Education.
National Fentanyl Prevention and Awareness Day.
Okay. And I've been seeing all of these like cities and towns and maybe even states like proclaiming this day. Tell us a little bit about that, and then maybe someone's interested in that, and how can they talk to their legislators, talk to their mayors, talk to whomever that they need to be able to get that done.
Well, Facing Fentanyl, this national day, I started with a proclamation that I was going to submit for my state of Colorado.
Okay.
And in doing that, I came across a national day, and my co-founder and I were talking about, how do we get this bigger? How do we get this out of Colorado? And we were into the night many times. So in a moment of delirium, her and I were talking and submitted a calendar day. And it started that simple. And when I woke up in the morning, the calendar day was accepted, and we put it out there to our families. And it's just a marketing tool is what it was. It's a piece of paper. And the families picked up on it, and the organizations picked up on it, and they began work across the United States. And took that proclamation that I submitted to my state, and we sent it out to as many people that asked for it, to everyone that asked for it. And then they put their state specific stats on there, and they began submitting too. It's a simple process. It takes it's lengthy it's a long time before you receive it. You wait 8 to 10 weeks in some situations, but it's another marketing tool, these proclamations, right? To draw attention in your state, get the press to listen, get people to listen. It's going out on the radio station. So we reach people one at a time. We're struggling to reach people all of the time. So that's what happened with the proclamations. But these families have used all of their resources, so many man hours, and gone out there and built these events in their communities. And today we have 28 events of organizations that are working with us. There are more events that we're finding every day. But these 28 events across the United States are more than people just standing behind a table and waiting for someone to walk by. All of us moms have done that at some point, desperate to reach the public. These are fentanyl summits, concerts, unity walks, candlelight vigils, There's one of our organizations is having their event in their downtown area, and the downtown area is going to be blocked off for a day of prevention. So they have gone above and beyond and done everything that they can to try to reach people. They've raised billboards in almost every state in the nation. One of our moms has 121 billboards up in her state, more than McDonald's has. That's what I tell them, you guys. And so they're doing everything they can to reach people. And so on the 21st, these events will be held from the East Coast to the West Coast. And then we have other organizations that have come in for a social media push on that day. So we can try to reach people outside of those events. And of course, the DEA has come in to say they support that day and put our Facing Fentanyl exhibit in their museum in Arlington. And we're just trying to reach out in every way we can. And these families are so determined to reach people. They don't stop. They're very tired right now and excited for the next couple of days.
Yeah. That's awesome. I did see that. And then did I also see the CDC recently put a
Yes.
push for you guys?
We began working with the CDC, and they were going to put some messaging out on the day for us. And then this week we received the news that they would be putting messaging out every day, starting it started a couple days ago, and every day through the middle of next week. And then they'll go into Overdose Awareness Day, continuing the message. And so they're wanting to work with us, or have begun to work with us, because they know that we're right in the middle of it, and we can give them information that they don't have. And oftentimes we look at organizations like CDC or government organizations, and we think they have all of the answers, but they don't have the life experience we do. So we're very happy that they're welcoming us into the conversation. We're happy that they're sharing our messaging.
That's awesome. So let's talk about this one last thing. I know you're busy. I know you've got a lot going on, and I promise to honor your time. So last thing I really want to discuss is about the difference between overdose, which is what we sometimes hear, and poisoning. And maybe you can elaborate on that for us.
So we, in our fentanyl communities, we use the word poisoning. And the reason behind that is because this drug is so deceptive. Many people do not know what they're getting. And it's so highly addictive. But if I were to hand you a glass of wine at a restaurant, and you drank that glass of wine, and it was a wine that had fentanyl in it, would you have ever expected that? No. So the day that I lost my daughter, and I looked at my husband and said, how did she overdose on a pill? It doesn't make sense to me. We've all taken a pill of some type, whether we had a dental surgery or anything. How did this happen? And he said, she didn't overdose. She was poisoned. And my husband had a bomb tech background, fire background. He'd done that many years. So he could break it down like that to me. And he said she was given something, thinking it was something else, and it took her life. So she didn't overdose. She was poisoned. She didn't purposely take too much of something. And then he explained the other capabilities of a drug like that to me, a weapon of mass destruction, comparable to anthrax. He said to me, if this were to be put out in a spray form or something like that, it could take many people's lives. And so I set out thinking that way, and then encountered hundreds and thousands more people, right? Thousands more people that think the same way that I had.
Wow.
So we're adamant that these are poisonings.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it makes complete sense in my brain. Do you find reluctancy in that as you talk to, like you said, senators, DEA agents, CDC, all of these kind of like what we assume are high-ranking government officials?
Yes, because overdose is the medical term, right? Many of us get death certificates or tox reports back, and when we look at these death certificates, and they will say accidental fentanyl. Uh, they've got all of these different terminologies, and I'm sorry, I'm a little overwhelmed this morning. I'm forgetting my own message, but there's all. The fact is fentanyl took their lives. It is fentanyl poisoning that we're talking about. So when we talk to other people that aren't familiar, don't have the lived experience, we're trying to get them to wrap their heads around this thinking, and it seems to be working now. DEA has been very deliberate in the way that they present this now. They've listened to what we have to say as affected families, and they are even presenting this as poisoning now. It takes time. If you went on the homepage of Facing Fentanyl, you will see there that we specifically state whether you call it overdose or whether you call it poisoning, tell someone. So we're not stuck on these words. To be so stubborn as to prevent someone from sharing the message. But it is poisoning. We see this as poisoning, and we will continue to push that message.
Wow. Yeah, absolutely. Okay, so I just want to end with you having some time. If there's anything that you feel like is on your heart, that if someone saw this and this is the only time that they're ever going to hear about fentanyl, about the dangers regarding fentanyl, about the awareness day, whatever it is, whatever message you would like to share, I just want to give you some time and space to be able to share that.
Well, first, I would tell you to learn the facts. Do not think this can't happen to you. Don't think your family is immune. And in talking to your children, be very open and honest. Show them what's going on with other people around the United States, all of the other teens that have lost their lives, that, they don't look like the kids that you would expect. Reach your senators, write to your governors, talk about it, because this is an increasing deathly crisis. And pay attention to what's going on. We want you to speak up. We want to hear your voice. No matter what community you're from, whether you're from the harm reduction community, the recovery community, this can affect any of us. So we need everyone and welcome everyone to come on board with us and start talking about fentanyl and ask for accountability and for this to be addressed at a federal level with a full government response.
Yeah. Wow. I know I said that was going to be my last question. I have one more. How do you see any links between fentanyl poisoning and, finding a pill and mental health? Anything there?
Well, sure. A lot of these youth are reaching out for comfort in some way. The college students have been using Adderall for many years.
Oh,
And, it's a way to help them get through their rough schedules and things like that. And now you're going to get one of these pills. It's going to have fentanyl in it. Our kids were isolated for all those months of COVID, and we've got to get back into in-person prevention with these kids. Quit trying to reach them through social media. People think that's the only way we can reach youth, right? Is through their phone. Well, they're not looking at our messaging. They're not, we don't even look at most of the messaging. Why would we expect our kids to?
Agreed.
So we've got to get boots on the ground, get back into, face-to-face relationships with these kids. That's very important. And that's what we're going to be working on for the 2023 year. We're already starting to work on the Fentanyl Prevention and Awareness Day for next year. And we want to be in there with those kids and not trying to reach them in other ways that we don't even have. We can't even measure success that way. Yeah. We don't know who gets those messages.
I like that. Yes, I'm all about the IRL instead of the URL. I mean, we've got to get back to in real life and having some and getting those teens back and young people. I mean, just the young children as well, that everyone was so encompassed in their devices, everything. And so we've got to get them back to hearing real messages from real people who've experienced real life situations.
We need to stand up for these kids. We're letting them fall by the wayside. and they reach out to a pill. You know, everything is so huge to them in these teen years. Some of these things seem like the end of the world, and they're not. They're just a part of growing up. So we need to get back in, back in our kids' faces, back in our kids' lives, and start helping them, protecting them, safeguarding them. And they're our most important population, and we're losing a generation of them right now.
Wow. That's a huge statement to end with. I think that was a great place to kind of end this conversation, because you're not wrong. I really appreciate your time. I know you've got a lot of things going on today, so we hope that they all work out in your favor and in the favor of, the nation, because some of the things you're doing is for the good of the nation, and that's the reality is of it. And so I just really appreciate everything you're doing. I would love to stay in contact with you and see all those awesome things that are going on with both Voices for Awareness and Facing Fentanyl, because those are amazing. I've only briefly got to see that. I did see the Facebook awareness. Can anyone get that?
Yes, if you go on to our Facebook on Facing Fentanyl, at Facing Fentanyl National Prevention Day, you will be able to submit the information's there, and you can send it in, and someone on our team, if not me, another person will get that to you.
Awesome. That's great. Okay. Well, I appreciate you being here, and I hope to get to, circle back with you in a little bit of time, and we find out more exciting things that are happening on this front.
Thank you. It doesn't stop on the 21st. We'll
That's
continue
right.
to do this all throughout the year.
Good.
Thank you so much, Jessica.
Absolutely. Thanks.
Bye-bye.